Hey, sports fans. This is Robert with WTP Sports Dudes. Are you excited for some football? I know you are, because I know I sure am. Today is the start of Texas fall practices. They're going to give 15 practices to get these guys prepared for their season opener against Colorado State. I had a chance to watch the videos of all of their coordinators. And I like what all of the coordinators were talking about. They were talking about getting the players ready for this season because it's going to be a long season and making those players to understand that this season is going to be one of those long seasons to where many of the guys in the 2 and 3 deep are going to have to play serious minutes in some of the games this season because they want to try to keep their team as fresh as possible. So they're trying to bring everybody up to speed during this fall camp so that they can have the numbers that they need to have a successful season. Because injuries are going to occur. It's the game of football. But they want to do everything they can to make sure that their young players who are 1 and 2 year players or those freshmen who just came in this past winter or spring, even some in the summer, they're going to make sure that these guys are ready for this season. When I was listening to Cal Flood, he talked about how he was getting ready to have an offensive line group that can play 8 to 10 deep. That's serious, y'all. Because if you all paid attention to last year's football team, those Michigan Wolverines, those guys were 8 to 10 deep last year. And although they lost all of their starters on their line to the NFL or to graduation, they are replacing all five of those players with five new players that had significant playing time last year. That is key. Whenever you're going to make a run in the college football playoff, you have to have a considerable amount of players who can play for your team. You got to be able to go 2 and 3 deep. And this year, Texas is going to be able to do that. They have significant players that have been in the program for 1 to 2 years that can really come in and give those starting offensive linemen a breather during those critical games when those guys can be ready for that fourth quarter grind. And we all know that you need players in that fourth quarter. If you refer back to when Sark first got to Texas, that's where they had issues at. They were beating teams the first 3 quarters. Their troubles came in the fourth quarter because they weren't deep enough as a team to be able to give those players who were starting some breathers so that they wouldn't have to be out there so many snaps. But they are rectifying that in the Texas Longhorns camp this year. So I'm very excited about Kyle Flood being able to have 8 to 10 guys he can rotate on that offensive line. So that's an awesome thing. Also at that wide receiver position, normally Sarkeesian only plays his nucleus of guys, maybe 3 or 4 guys. This year, he has the understanding in order for them to be able to go deep in the playoffs and to play a 16 game season, which possibly could happen, he has to make sure that he can go deeper than 4 deep at the wide receiver position. So he's working with 6 to 7 to 8 guys, trying to get them time and reps so that they can be ready whenever their number is called. I think that is significant when you got all these guys that are coming in the portal to Texas. They got 3 wide receivers out of the portal and a tight end. You got to bring those guys up to speed in order for them to be able to be effective during the season. But all of those guys are willing to do whatever it takes to be successful out there for these Texas Longhorns. So I'm excited about that as well. We're also bringing along some of those younger running backs, like a Trey Wisner. He's going to be backing up Jaden Blue and Cedric Baxter, but he is a guy that we know we can depend on because he's been in the system for at least a year. So he knows what is expected. He knows the plays. So he's going to be ready to go whenever he needs to give those two backs a breather during the game. Plus, hopefully, Texas will be able to put some teams away early and get all those players enough reps to where when they have to go in against the likes of a Michigan or Georgia, they're ready and up to speed and ready to go. So I was very excited about what Cal Flood had to say about the offensive unit, what he wants to do in those games so that he can make sure he can get as many players on the field as possible. And I think that that really speaks to the kind of organization that Steve Sarkisian runs. He's letting his coaches know, listen, it's a change in the dynamic in college football. We're going to a 12-team playoff, so we know that it's going to be far more games than it is the 12 to 13 to 14 game seasons. Whenever you add on two more games, and anybody who has played football, they'll tell you, adding two more games to a schedule can be grueling and it can be tough, and you have to be prepared for that kind of a season where it's going to go extended 2 and 3 or 4 more games. So I'm very excited that Steve Sarkisian has those coaches on the same page with him as far as being ready to be built for a grueling 15, 16 game season. So I'm very excited about that for the Texas Longhorns. I also listened to PK, which is Pete Kwiatkowski. He's the defensive coordinator. And he really emphasized how he understands that they got to be better at the third down defense. Now, they were very good in the third down defense last year, but he know they have to get even better because they got to get teams off the offense off the field so that we can get our offense on the field. And and Pete Kwiatkowski is really stressing that about that defense. And he also made a very valid point that I really liked when he talked about whenever you stop the run, teams are going to pass more, which means teams are going to get some yards on you. And the knock on Texas last year's their defense was that they gave up too many passing yards. But his point was, listen, when you're stopping the run, teams are going to have to pass more in order to keep up with you, especially when you already have a lead on them. So they're going to get some yards if they're passing more. So he said that he's going to work with those cornerbacks because he's deep at the defensive back position. So he's going to be able to run some guys out there too deep at every single position. Guys who have experience, guys who are very, very talented. So I'm very excited about that as well. He really mentioned his front four and the fact that he got two solid guys as bookends who are run stuffers and can get at the quarterback in Baron Sorrell and Ethan Burke. But he also has some other players that can come in behind those guys to get him a breather. Out of the portal, they got Trey Moore from UCF. From UTSA. So when you got a guy like that who had 14, 15 sacks last year coming into a Division One program like Texas, with, who is going to have schemes and designs that can get you to that quarterback. All you got to do is get that quarterback on the ground. So we're going to be a lot better at getting that quarterback to the ground. We got good pressure all last year and the year before, but now we got to put an emphasis on getting those quarterbacks to the ground. And I think we have a nucleus of players who can do that. So I'm very excited about what those defensive ends are going to look like. Probably our biggest concern is probably how are our defensive linemen going to gel since we lost Tavontre Sweat and Byron Murphy. But of course, we got a nucleus of six guys who we think we're going to be able to rotate at those two positions. Now, they're not probably not going to be the greatest at stopping the run. They're probably not going to be that. But if we are able to hold teams on first and second down to 4 yards or less, and they have to throw the football, we got guys that are on that defensive tackle position that can get to the quarterback. These guys are really built for getting to the quarterback at the defensive line position. They're not big run stoppers like we had last year, but they are going to be successful at doing what they need to do as far as being complementary to the rush game, pass game on defense. So we're happy to see that they're going to be able to do some things with those six players that they have, that they're probably going to be rotating at those two positions. So we're excited about that. We're also excited about Anthony Hill in his second year taking over for Jalen Ford at the linebacker position where Jalen Ford was last year. And he made a real valid point about Anthony Hill being a great football player, but not quite a good linebacker yet. I thought that was good to let the young man know to listen, we got you playing linebacker. You can do a lot of things for us because we know you all about see ball, get ball. but we really got to make you a technician at that linebacker position where you can cover backs out the backfield. You can run, stop, stuff those holes, and things like that. So Anthony Hill was built for that because he's a very aggressive football player. So we're excited that he's going to be out there full time, and David Bender will be right there beside him, who a guy who has played a lot of football for Texas. So we're excited about what he's going to be able to do. He's going to be able to clean up some of them past mistakes that he made in the passing game. So we're excited about that unit. But we also got a reliable backup in Mo Blackwell and Leona LaFau. So we think that those two will come on this season as well, as they're going to get more reps than they have in the past. At the defensive back positions, though, PK has a serious chess piece that he can use in that defensive backfield in Johnny Barron, a player who can play that star position, which means he's going to cover the slot receiver who can go any direction in his route running. So you really need a guy who's really skilled at turning his hips and being able to understand what the team is trying to do before the snap of the ball so that he can cover those guys up whenever they go into the passing game. I'm excited about what PK talked about getting sacks. We've got more sacks last year than we did the previous year, and we're probably going to get more sacks this year than we did last year. He was saying our sack numbers got to increase, and we got a significant number of interceptions last year, but we need to get more takeaways in the interception department as well. So he said they were really stressing that on defense again, getting takeaways, being able to have guys who can play man to man, so we can go to a one high safety, to keep that deep threat from happening, and also be able to cover those guys. If you got guys coming off the edge who don't have to cover guys as long, they can jump routes, they can get their hands on guys to slow up their routes, to redirect them. All of those kind of things that you need to have your defense be able to do when you got pass rushers and you got defensive backs who can be physical and who can run with other receivers from the opposite side of the ball. So it's exciting to see what PK is trying to do with the defense this year. He's gotten better and better and better each year, and it looks like he's going to start having those defenses like he had when he was at Washington, which was able to be very successful and led them to a college football playoff several years ago. The last coordinator I want to talk about is Jeff Banks. He's the special teams coordinator, and Jeff Banks has a significant role for the Texas Longhorns because, as you know, a lot of times football games come down to special teams. Are you making your field goals? Are you getting good punts? Are you blocking punts? Are you blocking field goals? Are you getting good returns in the return game, whether it be punt return or kickoff return? All of those things are significant and game changers in football. I don't know if you all remember a couple of years ago when Texas played Missouri in a bowl game, and I think it might have been a Texas Bowl. Dixon, the kicker, the punter, was the MVP. He was able to keep Missouri from getting across the 50-yard line, really, because all of his punts were down inside the 20. Whenever we needed to flip the field, we were able to flip the field with Mr. Dixon. He was kicking the ball tremendously that day, and he was the MVP of that game. And we know that special teams plays a vital role in any game out there on that football field. So we're very excited about what we have in our field goal kicker. But where our concern might be is we got to get a brand new punter because we got our punter graduated and he went on to the NFL or wherever he might be at this time. But we got to get a new punter. We still have our field goal kicker, but we got to have guys in position that's ready to flip the field for us when we need that field flipped. We also got to replace our gunners and our kickoff and punt returners. Xavier Worthy's no longer there. Keelan Robinson is no longer there. They were both vital in our return game. And also, Keelan Robinson was very vital in our punt kickoff game. So we got to make sure that we can fill in those voids from those gunners and those returners. But we really do believe we got some capable guys in Matthew Golden and Silas Bowden for punt and kickoff return because both of those guys are proven that they are successful at doing both of those things. So we're excited about what they're going to do. And if I can almost predict that we're going to have a kickoff return and a punt return this season against somebody because those two guys are dynamic in the punt return game and the kickoff return game. So I'm very excited about what our special teams are going to do. Hopefully, Bert Auburn is able to kick a higher percentage than he did the previous 2 seasons. He did really well last season. He went 19 straight field goals made, which was awesome. And I don't think he's ever missed an extra point. So that's awesome. So I think that we're going to be in good shape as far as field goals are concerned. But this may be his last year in the burn orange, so we want to make sure that we have somebody that can back him up. I believe Will Stone is a player that will be doing that for us. So I just wanted to end this video with the fact that I'm excited about my Texas Longhorns and what they're going to be able to do this season. Hopefully we can be injury free, but if not injury free, then at least keep our injuries to a minimum. Hopefully those guys are going to stay healthy and do the right things and put the right things in their bodies so that they can stay as healthy as possible. I'm very excited for this season. So hopefully I'll be able to get on later on this evening after I get to watch Steve Sarkisian's press conference, so I can get on this evening and share a little bit of thoughts about that. But like I said at the end of all of my videos, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell so that you can get notifications whenever we make a new video. And as always, hook 'em.